Good morning, good evening, whatever time of day it is for you. Welcome to this thing that I do called Thor's Entertainment. I am Thor, and it is another Friday, so it's time for a Fatal Friday video. Fatal Friday is a series where I look back on videos where I casually went into the Kombat League for Mortal Kombat 1, and I did that in order to try and pull off a character's unique finisher like a Brutality or a Fatality. This week's video is for the main roster character Kitana, and it is going to be highlighting her combo Brutality Kiss It. The combo you need to beat somebody with to get this Brutality is going to be forward 1-2, but you have to be holding the down button whenever pulling off that combo. As with all of my Kitana videos, the cameo character helping her out is going to be Jax. And with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the Kombat League set. The random opponent I got paired up against is using Reptile and the cameo Subzero. They opened up the fight and got the first hit using Reptile's Running Man attack. And seeing this lizard man running at me would become a very regular sight throughout this entire set. I mean, this reptile person was using that attack very frequently. Sometimes it looked like this person was just using it as a tool to get close to me, closing the distance. Other times he would be special canceling stuff like his low kicks into that dash, and yeah, just overall this was a very regular attack from this reptile. Besides that though, he also very commonly used Reptile's alligator roll attack. I would say that's the second most frequent thing he did throughout the entire set. And yeah, after getting the first hit, that first round really does not go in my way whatsoever. Reptile eventually ends up winning it. And he does so by landing one of those teleporting lizard drop attacks, and then following that up with another running man attack. So yeah, I counted like 4 or 5 of those running attacks in the first round. And it would turn out that Reptile's willingness to throw out these unsafe special moves would not be slowing down in the second round, or really any other round for that matter. Now, I do not do anything incredible with Kitana by any means in this second round, but I do at least get a little bit of momentum going. So even if I did not pull off any awesome combos in the second round, I did have a good number of openings, and I still tried to make as good of use of them as I could, and apparently I did just enough, because by the end of the second round, I ended up being victorious. Although even though I do end up winning the second round, it's still kind of hard to watch back in some cases. Like right here, I just popped Reptile up in the air, and that should have left him open for at least a modest combo. I mean, it wasn't going to be anything amazing, no 300 plus damage or anything like that, but it easily could have been over 200. So I could tell this was going to be one of those sets where there was just a decent amount of struggling, and the only thing really keeping me in it was the fact that Reptile seemed to be doing the same thing. So in the very first match of this set, it all came down to a third and final round. Who was going to get the first point of the set? Well, it started off not looking all that great for me because the round began with me getting cornered and taking some early damage from Reptile, and I was just trying to find any way I could get myself out of it. Eventually I do, and I try my best to get things closer as far as the health deficit goes, but it felt like I was playing from behind the entire round. And by the end of that round, it was just me hoping that Reptile would do something really unsafe and I'd have the opportunity to block it. And since it was unsafe, I'd be able to combo out of that and then maybe land a fatal blow at the end of that combo, which maybe possibly would have done just enough damage to Reptile to end up winning the round for me and then winning the entire match for me. But unfortunately for me, that's just not how things end up going, and well...
Brutality! Reptile wins.
And alright, at the very end of the first match of the set, Reptile ended up winning, and not only winning, but he did it in style pulling off a behind you Brutality. Which that is the Brutality version of what appears to be Reptile's favorite attack, the Running Man attack, that I cannot remember the actual name of right now, but I'm going to keep calling it the Running Man attack. Yeah, he used that plenty in the first match, so it's not surprising at all that he would go for the Brutality version of it at the very end of that match. Which I'm not mad about, because I don't think I've seen that Brutality since I did a video on it myself back when this game first came out. So yeah, I don't like losing, especially to start off a set, but it was kind of cool to get to see that Brutal again. But yeah, jumping ahead to the first round of the second set, Reptile yet again got the first hit off of a low kick this time. And after that, this one just became another one of those ill-fated rounds where neither one of us could really get anything going. I mean, we went most of the round without being able to do more than maybe 1 or 2 hits at a time. Like, if there were any combos, it was usually off of like a special attack or just the bare minimum, really. Fortunately, it was a close round which kept it interesting, but it was ultimately combo starved, and that was until Reptile managed to land one at the very end of the round. And speaking of Reptile pulling things off at the end of the round, he ended up taking that first round. And I suddenly found myself potentially just one round away from losing the entire set. So in a way, me playing as Kitana had my back against the wall, and I had to turn this around pretty quickly even though I was playing pretty sloppily up to this point. And I sort of kind of got that turnaround almost immediately after that because, well, while it was not anything that would dazzle anybody, like there weren't any crazy high damaging combos or anything like that, I was still landing small 200-ish damage combos, and I was doing those pretty consistently the entire round. And in the midst of all that, Reptile never really got anything going against me, and that ended up being a really easy second round victory for me. Now, I don't know where exactly all that success was hiding in the previous rounds, but I will take it. And courtesy of that quick momentum change that took place in the second round, the second match was now going into a third and final round, which I am now realizing happened in back-to-back matches. While this may not have been the most amazing display of what either of these chosen characters could do, at least we were having a pretty competitive set between us. Now, unfortunately for me, round number 3 would not go as smoothly as the previous one. The round started with neither of us really getting any good combos going, and just getting stray hits or special attacks in from time to time. We were definitely just at the point where it kind of felt like tactics were being entirely abandoned. Like we were just kind of throwing out specials at one point and seeing whose health got chipped away first. Now, towards the end of the round, I actually thought I was going to wrap up the match with a pretty good combo, but then unfortunately for me, Reptile ends up using his breaker, and well, it was just right back to small hits, throws, and specials from that point forward until one of us was one hit away from defeat, and that happened to be me. And for no good reason, I just kind of say screw it and I throw out a fatal blow to see what will happen, and yeah, he blocks it. But then he fails to punish it because he whiffs his throw. And somehow I managed to pop Reptile up in the air and do an air combo to do just enough damage to win the match and tie the score at 1-1. I'm genuinely not sure how I pulled that off.
Kitana wins.
That was just pure luck, but okay, next match point wins. And yeah, I definitely don't feel like I necessarily deserved to win that last match, but somehow here we are in a third match, and I was starting to get curious if I could steal the entire set after that really random spurt of luck. So the third match opened up with Reptile doing his favorite dash attack into my block, and while I was summoning Jax to do a ground pound, I ended up getting the first hit of the set. Or I should say I got my first hit to open a round for the entire set, which was nice because it allowed me to start off the match with a good amount of meter. Now, despite a nice early start, things yet again ended up being a little bit too eerily close for my liking the whole fight. It felt like it was just a constant sequence of specials or throws. I was trying to get Jax more involved, but the results just really weren't there for me yet. And having full meter was kind of nice to have in the round, but as we have seen throughout every match up to this point, Reptile was not really doing any big combos, so there really wasn't anything to break. So I really needed to consider other ways I could use that meter. Although that definitely was not going to happen in round 1, unfortunately, and Reptile ends up taking it. If I wanted to win the set, I would have to take the second and third round consecutively and also force a third and final round for the third consecutive match. Which, going into the second round, it started off pretty well for that scenario. Like, I get my best chunk of damage that I have pulled off the entire fight, and that's courtesy of an up block, and then my retaliatory combo takes Reptile up into the air, and it ends with about 295 damage being dealt. And not long after that, I block an alligator roll, and then Reptile receives another 230 damage. And while Reptile was starting to get a little bit more momentum towards the end of that round, I mean, he started landing a few stray hits to chip away at me and make it a little bit closer. Damage was kind of already done, and I ended up taking the second round, and the scenario I needed was starting to come true. The entire set was coming down to a third and final round, one final chance to not only win the set, but also go for the brutality. This was a final round where it felt like Reptile just started to briefly slow down on the special attacks he had been throwing out the entire time that were unsafe, and the opening of that round was mostly just us avoiding each other for like the first 20 seconds. Then eventually he came back around to his special attacks, the first of which was a running man that I caught with a fan toss, and then the next was an armored wake-up alligator roll that actually caught me. And those two moves were the ones that would be used a couple more times throughout the round with mixed results. Because yeah, he would hit me with some or I would block some, so it's really hard to say that any of it was all that successful, but it definitely was not exactly a failure either, so yeah. Saying he was getting mixed results seems like a fair assessment. But the result that really matters here is that in the end, he goes for another alligator roll at the worst possible time because I block it, and then I can follow up with a combo because it was unsafe, which means it is Brutality Time.
Brutality. Kitana wins.
And there it was. That was the Kiss It Brutality for Kitana. It was nice to wrap up the entire set with the brutality, especially after 3 consecutive matches that went down to a third and final round. And also since Reptile managed to pull off the behind you brutality on me. So yeah, with that in mind, it was just nice to kind of be able to do one back to him. So yeah, thank you to the randomly selected Reptile user I got to fight against in the Kombat League. We were definitely both struggling on that day, but at least we were fighting on about the same level as each other, so that made for some pretty close fights. And that is actually the only reason I selected this video specifically to highlight this brutality. Like, there are plenty of other videos where I play much better as Kitana, but I like just how close this fight ended up being in the end. And I felt like showing how, somehow, I pulled a victory and a brutality out of that mess. After all, not every fight's gonna end up looking spectacular, and sometimes you just kind of play crappy one day. This was definitely the case here, and I realize now that this is my second video in a row that I have posted on YouTube that I kind of struggled in a bit. So next week I'm going to have to break that up a little bit, and I'll try to find something that has much better gameplay by me and has a Kombat League result that definitely reflects that. In fact, I have an Ermac video in mind that might be just right for that break. But enough looking ahead, I'm going to start wrapping up this video. Which, thank you for watching it, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be sure to show the brutality one more time at the end of this outro, that way you can enjoy it one final time before we part ways. And if you liked this finisher video, feel free to check out the others that I have on the Thor's Entertainment channel. I have plenty of them under the various Fatal Friday playlists, and I also have playthroughs of other games as well, so feel free to check it all out and see what stands out to you. With all of that out of the way though, take care, and hopefully I will see you next time.
Kitana wins.